The Orville Season 2, Episode 7, Deflectors. There's been, since the beginning of the series, a lot of focus on Moclan culture. They're very integrated into the Union as far as their partnership, and they're a culture that is very important to the Union's efforts, but at the same time, it is so different in so many ways. There are just stark differences in morality and how subjects are handled that really can be a strain, and they even discussed it a little bit in this episode about how it's difficult and necessary but difficult to handle these different societal in your relationships with alien species, and how difficult that can be, and how that can be in many cases the hardest point of having these partnerships. And this was another great one. I think they've consistently been at least fairly good with each of these Moclan focus episodes. This might be my overall favorite one. It did such a good job handling something and doing what good sci-fi does, where it really puts a lens on a subject that is sometimes uncomfortable, sometimes, depending on who you are, your perspective, controversial, but something that is current and really is a part of society and is an issue that is being dealt with, but puts it in a way that it's not just a direct focus on that. It really does it in a way that's somehow askew, somehow through an alien culture, and here of course with the Moclans, and how what we would consider being gay is the norm, and for them being attracted to females would be considered abnormal within society. Just how in a large portion of our society there is a negative connotation with being gay, with homosexuality, and how our society, because of those elements of society that don't accept people just for who they are for one reason or another, whether it's religious or whatever, how that is an issue we deal with. And it really shows the insensitivity and the brutality of how some people treat others just based on them not having an understanding of that difference, not having an accepting perspective on that person. Just, this is who that person is. They've done nothing to you, nothing wrong. Just because they're different than you in this respect, you somehow see them as lesser, or see that part of themselves as being wrong. And I think this was a great way to do it. It was a very good episode. I think it really shows how the show is evolving over its second season, I think, to really focus on characters and social issues, and it really isn't afraid to do that, to tackle those things. And I was especially happy to see Kevin Daniels, who played Lokar. His performance was fantastic. I think he did such a good job with this character. You felt so much sympathy for him and his position, and it was heartbreaking in so many ways to see someone be torn down just because of a part of who they are naturally. It was just heartbreaking to see. And I think we finally at this point have an episode that made me feel a little bit invested in Tala. I think that before then, the first couple episodes with her, she seemed a little too secondary for you to really get to know her. You had little moments with her, but I feel like this is the first time that she was really thrust into the forefront, and you got to know her character more and understand her character, and I really enjoyed that aspect. I really think this was another great performance by Jessica along with Kevin. The two of them really carried this episode, and I think just did a fantastic job. You have the idea of the Moclans coming to test a new deflector system, and you have this genius Moclan scientist who Lokar, who is very well known. He comes aboard the Orville testing this new system, and it turns out that there was a past relationship between him and Bortus, and Bortus was absolutely in love with him. That's who he at first intended to marry. Really thought he was going to spend his life with Lokar, and then he found out that he was attracted to females, and he showed that he really truly loved him by, the culture would demand that he would turn him over right then, and Lokar's career would have been over at that point, like his life would have been over at that point. But he didn't. Instead, he kept the secret within him and just ended the relationship on a more amicable level. But there is, of course, that strain, and then you also have Clyden, who then finds out about that secret, and Clyden shows an example of the Moclan bigotry when it comes to issues of that, which is really pressed upon in this episode. And there is a really fascinating murder mystery, which wasn't hard to figure out, but it was enough to really, I think, it helped carry the story. First, you have Lokar admitting that he is attracted to Tala, and of course the crew not really knowing about this aspect of Moclan society, because they're very known just to be the one-gendered society, is shocked by this, but and it seems like relationship to pursue, but they do have a few moments together, and they do kind of go on a date, and he starts teaching him how to dance, and it really starts to come together, and they're very sweet together, and it's very interesting to see. Then she gets called away, and while he's still in the simulator, and Clyden comes and confronts him, and just how he hates him just because of what he is, and he's disgusted by him as their society has taught him to be, and he leaves. And then Lokar tries to find a way to escape this life of pain, and escape because he knows that he is now finally going to be outed and his life is going to be over, and he wants to just escape from this existence where he can't be himself. He has to always hide that part of him and can't truly be happy. But of course in Moclan culture, something like suicide is out of the question, so he fakes his own death and frames Clyden and tries to hide aboard the ship. And at first Clyden is taken in as prisoner, and is almost at that point like he's accused and almost seems like the only possible suspect in the cover-up. At first seems like it's going to bring Clyden to the forefront as the murderer, but the murder never actually took place. Lokar falsified the images and hid his attempt at escape, and really that was a great out, to fake your own death and that type of thing. But as Tala, although she felt for his situation and in many ways wanted to just let him go, she couldn't morally, despite her now of course strong dislike of Clyden and that's bigotry and actions that Clyden was taking, she can't morally let him go down for a murder he didn't commit. So despite her truly starting to have feelings for Lokar, she ends up turning him in, and it's so sad, and you really, I think, feel such an emotional attachment to Lokar. And I think that again, this is the first time where you actually see a shining moment for Alar's replacement, or you finally say like, all right, this is really going to work. I think it took a couple episodes, but overall I think those performances really sold the whole structure of the episode, and I think it really did a good job of tackling a prominent social issue. I think overall it just was a well-structured piece that this for me is like 2 in a row of just fantastic episodes, this and the previous one. I think overall this season has been great, but like these two back to back, and Amanda and I had missed a week and watched them back to back then, and we both were like, wow, this was just 2 A+ home runs as far as we're concerned in a row. And we look forward to seeing the next episode, because this was just handled so well. I really was in a way almost surprised at how good this episode was.